The rain-slicked streets of Manhattan gleamed like the spine of an old paperback under the sodium lamps, and that's when I saw him again. Leaning against a lamppost outside the Strand, his collar turned up against the downpour, a dog-eared copy of The Great Gatsby clutched like a talisman. "You again?" he said, his voice cutting through the patter like a cracked whip, eyes narrowing not in anger but in that raw, unguarded ache that makes a stranger feel like fate's cruel joke. I froze mid-stride, my umbrella forgotten, water pooling at my boots, because in that instant, I knew. This wasn't coincidence. It was the universe underlining a sentence we'd both been too afraid to read. It had started 3 months earlier, at the New York Antiquarian Book Fair in the Park Avenue Armory. I'd wandered in like I always did, seeking solace in the musty alchemy of ink and paper, a ritual to drown out the echo of my father's voice still rattling in my skull. "You're wasting your life on stories that don't pay, Alex." At 32, I was a ghost in my own existence. A failed novelist slinging lattes at a hole-in-the-wall cafe in the village, my manuscript gathering dust in a drawer like a bad omen. Books were my rebellion, my quiet war against the beige predictability of a life scripted by Wall Street expectations. That day, the Armory hummed with the elite, collectors in tailored wool, academics with wire-rimmed glasses, the faint scent of leather bindings mingling with overpriced espresso. I was thumbing through a first-edition Leaves of Grass when I felt eyes on me. He was across the aisle, mid-30s maybe, with the kind of effortless dishevelment that screams I've got secrets sharper than yours. Sharp jaw shadowed by weekend stubble, hazel eyes that held the weight of too many late-night deadlines, and a navy peacoat slung over broad shoulders like armor. His fingers traced the spine of a slim volume, Giovanni's Room, Baldwin's gut punch of a tale, and our gazes locked over the stacks. "Hiding from the world in Whitman?" he asked, voice low and laced with that East Coast edge, Brooklyn maybe, or Jersey. Close enough to the city to carry its grit. I laughed, a rusty sound I hadn't heard from myself in weeks. "Or finding it. You look like you're auditioning for the brooding anti-hero in a Baldwin sequel." He smirked, closing the book with a snap that echoed like a challenge. "Jordan Hale, journalist by trade, collector by curse. And you, Alex Rivera, barista by necessity, dreamer by default." We talked for an hour, about how Giovanni's Room guts you with its unspoken truths, how New York's pulse can feel like a lover's erratic heartbeat. He confessed a weakness for lost cause stories, the kind that end in quiet devastation. I admitted my manuscript was a love letter to a city that chewed up romantics like me. By closing time, we'd exchanged numbers scribbled on a torn flyleaf, and as I stepped into the April chill, his text buzzed. "If you're hunting missing pieces, try the Brooklyn Book Festival next month. I hear the rare editions section is a graveyard of regrets." I told myself it was nothing, a flirtation with fate, the thrill of a shared glance. But Jordan lingered like a half-read chapter. Our second meeting wasn't planned, or so I lied to myself. The Brooklyn Festival sprawled across Cadman Plaza, tents flapping like sails in the harbor wind, vendors hawking everything from pulp sci-fi to illuminated manuscripts. I spotted him before he saw me, perched on a folding chair, interviewing a grizzled poet about the death of the American dream. His laugh carried over the crowd, genuine and unguarded, pulling me like a riptide. We collided at the mystery booth, me reaching for a signed Hammett, him for the same. "Stalking me now, Rivera?" he teased, but his eyes softened, that hazel warmth cutting through the September haze. We spent the afternoon weaving through the stalls, trading barbs over bad coffee and better books. He told me about growing up in a Jersey suburb where different was a dirty word, how he'd fled to the city at 18 with a duffel and a dog-eared copy of The Catcher in the Rye, chasing stories that felt like his own. I shared fragments of my own fracture. Cuban-American roots in Miami, transplanted to NYC after Dad's heart attack. The weight of Be a Man. Mijo clashing with the boy who'd always loved boys in secret. By dusk, as the festival lights flickered on, we sat on a bench overlooking the East River, the skyline a jagged silhouette against the bruise-purple sky. "You ever feel like you're missing a page?" Jordan asked, his knee brushing mine. "Not accidental, electric." Like the story of you got torn out somewhere along the way? All the time? I whispered, heart hammering like it might splinter. His hand found mine then, tentative as a first draft, and in that touch New York blurred. The honks, the crowds, the ceaseless churn. Leaving just us, two souls adrift in the same unfinished narrative. The weeks blurred into a rhythm of stolen moments. Late-night texts dissecting call me by your name. Coffee runs where his fingers lingered on the cup I handed him. Walks along the high line where the wildflowers whispered conspiracies. Jordan was a storm wrapped in calm, passionate about his investigative pieces for the Village Voice, exposing corruption in the arts world, but haunted by a cynicism that surfaced in quiet confessions. A brother lost to addiction, a mentor who'd betrayed his trust for a byline. Stories can save you, he'd say, or they can carve you hollow. I let him in inch by inch. My apartment in the East Village became our unofficial library. Stacks of manuscripts on the fire escape, his laughter echoing off exposed brick as we debated Austen versus Hemingway. One rainy Tuesday, after a shift that left me smelling like burnt espresso, he showed up with takeout from Joe's Pizza and a rare find. A 1950s printing of Maurice by Forster, the kind of book that dared to name what we'd both buried. For the missing pieces, he said. And when he kissed me, it was soft, searching, like turning to the page where the plot twists toward hope. But hope is a fragile binding. Our third book fair was at the Javits Center, a cavernous beast of a convention where the air hummed with deals and desperation. I'd splurged on a booth for my manuscript, Echoes of the Hudson, a semi-autobiographical tale of a young man grappling with identity in the shadow of the bridges. Jordan promised to swing by, but as the doors opened, the crowd surged like a tide, and doubt crept in. What if this is just another story he collects and discards? He arrived at noon, weaving through the throng with that easy grace, a paper cup of coffee in each hand. Nervous author? He grinned, planting a chaste kiss on my cheek that drew a few raised eyebrows from nearby dealers. We manned the booth together, his charisma drawing browsers like moths. What's it about? They'd ask, and he'd spin it better than I ever could. It's about finding your voice when the world's shouting you down. By evening, we'd sold a dozen copies, and as the hall emptied, he pulled me into an alcove stacked with forgotten crates. You're incredible, Alex, he murmured, his breath warm against my neck. This book, it's you. Raw, real. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. His arms wrapped around me, solid and sure, and for the first time in years, I believed it. We walked out into the neon night, hands linked, the city our witness. A constellation of possibilities flickering just beyond the skyline. Yet even then, in the glow of that triumph, a shadow flickered. Jordan's phone buzzed incessantly that night, texts he silenced with a muttered curse. Work, he said, but his jaw tightened, eyes distant. I pushed it down, chalking it up to deadline stress. After all, in New York, everyone's carrying ghosts. Little did I know his were about to become mine. The autumn leaves in Central Park turned the paths into rivers of crimson and gold, mirroring the flush on Jordan's cheeks as we picnicked under the Bethesda fountain. Cheese from Murray's, wine smuggled in a thermos, and his head on my lap while I read aloud from The Price of Salt. Highsmith knew longing like a bruise, he said, tracing patterns on my knee. The kind that aches long after the hit. His vulnerability was a gift, unwrapped in these stolen hours. Stories of his first love, a college fling in Philly that ended in a slammed door and a shattered heart. The way he'd built walls with words, his bylines a shield against the world's indifference. I mirrored him, confessing the manuscript's true core. A veiled portrait of my own coming out. The night I told my father and watched his disappointment harden like cooling lava. We were building something real, thread by thread. Weekends antiquing in Chelsea Market, where he'd haggle over first edition comics with boyish glee. Evenings at the Stonewall Inn, toasting to the ghosts of revolutions past, his hand steady on my thigh under the table. You're my plot twist, Alex, he'd whisper in the dim light, and I'd melt, forgetting the freelance gigs that barely covered rent, the query letters stacking up like unpaid bills. For the first time, love felt like a bestseller. Not the escapist fantasy, but the gritty, page-turning kind that leaves you breathless. But New York has a way of testing bindings. It came at the Winter Village Book Fair in Bryant Park, mid-November, when the air bit like regret and holiday lights twinkled prematurely. I'd scored an invite to a panel on queer narratives in contemporary lit, my name sandwiched between heavyweights, a nod to Echo's buzz in indie circles. Jordan was my +1, fidgeting in the green room as I adjusted my tie. "You'll kill it?" he assured. But his smile didn't reach his eyes, shadowed by whatever phantom had been haunting his calls lately. The panel was a whirlwind. Spotlights hot as interrogation lamps, questions probing like scalpels. How do you navigate authenticity in a market that commodifies pain? One moderator asked. I spoke from the gut, about writing as reclamation, turning silence into symphonies, and the applause thrummed like validation. Jordan was there in the front row, nodding, pride etched in his features. Afterward, at the signing table, he hovered, charming fans with anecdotes, until a woman approached. Mid-40s, sharp bob, designer coat screaming editor. Jordan Hale? Voice exposé was brilliant. That gallery scandal? Gold. She turned to me. And you must be the muse. Alex Rivera, right? Love what you're doing with identity arcs. My pen faltered. Muse? Jordan's laugh was too quick. Guilty. Alex inspires the hell out of me. But as she drifted away, I caught the flicker. Guilt? Ambition? We escaped to a nearby dive, oysters and IPAs to chase the awkward. She knows people, he explained, clinking glasses. Networking, babe. That's the game. I nodded, but the word muse lodged like a splinter. That night, in the cab ride home, he pulled me close, kisses fierce and apologetic, and I let the doubt dissolve in the heat of his touch. It's nothing, I told myself, just the city's paranoia creeping in. The splinter festered, though, over the next fortnight. Jordan's absences stretched. Late nights at the voice office, cryptic voicemails about a big piece. Our texts shifted from flirtatious banter to logistical check-ins. Rain tonight? Umbrella? I'd spot him at readings I wasn't invited to, schmoozing with agents whose names I recognized from my rejection pile. One evening, nursing a scotch at my kitchen table, I unearthed his notebook from under the couch, forgotten in a rush. Pages of scrawled notes. Alex's laugh like cracked porcelain. Hudson metaphors, queer undercurrents. My heart seized. Sketches of scenes, echoes of my own prose, woven into what looked like an outline? For a book? I confronted him the next morning, the notebook splayed on the counter like evidence. Jordan, what the hell is this? He blinked, coffee mug halfway to his lips, then sighed. A deep, weary exhale that aged him a decade. It's nothing finished, just ideas. You've got this fire, Alex. Stories pouring out. I thought maybe we could collaborate. You write the heart, I shape the edges. His hands reached for mine, earnest, pleading. It's not stealing. It's us amplified. Relief warred with unease. Collaboration. The word tasted like compromise, but his eyes, those hazel depths, held such raw hope. Promise me transparency, I said, voice steady despite the tremor. No more secrets. He nodded, sealing it with a kiss that tasted of redemption. We spent the day plotting in bed, sheets tangled, laughter bubbling as we brainstormed titles. Pages of us, ink and echo. It felt like partnership, the kind that binds souls tighter than contracts. Christmas loomed, a glittering trap in the city that never sleeps. Jordan surprised me with tickets to the Nutcracker at Lincoln Center. Ballet in a sea of twinkling chandeliers, his arm around me as Clara danced into Wonderlands. Afterward, snowball fight in Columbus Circle, his whoops echoing as we pelted each other like kids unbound. This is what I've been missing, he confessed over mulled wine at a pop-up bar, snowflakes catching in his lashes. You, steady, like the best kind of story. I believed him. God, how I believed. But betrayal brews in the quiet corners, and ours simmered in an email I glimpsed by accident. His laptop open on the nightstand, a draft submission to a major publisher. Unbound. A memoir of love and lies in the apple. The byline, Jordan Hale. Excerpts leaped out, phrases I'd whispered in confidence. My father's disdain rendered in vivid prose, our first kiss framed as his eureka moment. It wasn't collaboration. It was extraction. My life mined for his narrative gold. The world tilted. I slipped out before dawn, the cold slapping sense into me, wandering the pre-holiday hush of Fifth Avenue. Trees strung with lights mocked my unraveling. Joy to the world. They seemed to jeer. By noon, I'd holed up in a Soho cafe, drafting a furious text I never sent. How could you? Instead, I called my sister in Miami, her voice a lifeline through tears. He's using you, Mijo. Walk away. But walking from Jordan felt like ripping out my own chapters. He found me that evening, pounding on my door with apologies scripted like a climax scene. Alex, please, it's not what you think. The publisher approached me. They want my voice, but it's inspired by us. I was going to tell you. Lies layered like dust jackets. But his desperation cracked me open. We argued through the night, voices rising over the hum of traffic, accusations flying like errant commas. You see me as material, I shouted. Not a man. He crumpled, tears carving tracks down his face. I see you as everything. That's why it scares me. Dawn broke with a fragile truce. Co-write it, I demanded. Equal billing or burn it. He agreed, eyes red-rimmed. And in that vulnerability, I glimpsed the boy from Jersey again. Scared, searching. We vowed honesty, sealing it with tentative touches. The city outside our window a canvas of second chances. But trust, once frayed, unravels thread by thread. As winter deepened, Jordan's meetings multiplied. Lunches with his editor, research trips to the Morgan Library. I'd catch him staring at me sometimes. Not with love, but appraisal, like a curator eyeing a flawed masterpiece. And in the quiet, when he slept, I'd wonder, am I the story, or just the prologue? The unraveling peaked at the New Year's Eve book gala in the New York Public Library. Marble halls aglow with champagne flutes and whispered deals. Jordan had pulled strings for us. Black tie, my first taste of the literati's velvet rope. I wore a borrowed tux, nerves jangling like loose change, his hand on my elbow a anchor. We're in this together, he murmured, and for a moment, under the chandelier's cascade, I believed we'd rewritten the ending. Then she appeared, Eleanor Voss, the editor from Bryant Park, sleek as a stiletto in emerald silk. Jordan, darling, the proposal. It's electric. She air-kissed him, then turned to me with pitying eyes. Alex, such raw material. Jordan's captured you beautifully. Captured. The word landed like a guillotine. He stammered, it's collaborative. But she waved it off, pulling him into a huddle of suits and contracts. I slipped away, the grand staircase a spiral of isolation, bursting into the Rose main reading room. Long tables under vaulted skies, lamps casting pools of gold on silent scholars. Collapsing into a chair, I buried my face in hands that shook with rage. Missing piece? He'd taken chunks of me and called it art. The door creaked. Jordan entered. Tie askew, face ashen. Alex, wait. No. My voice echoed, steel-wrapped. You promised equality. This is your solo flight. He knelt, grasping my hands. I panicked. The advance, its security after all we've lost. Lost? His brother, my father, our pains, commodified. Security built on my spine? I wrenched free, storming out into the fireworks exploding over the reservoir, colors bleeding like fresh edits. We didn't speak for days. New Year's resolutions mocked from every storefront. Knew you. Mine? Survival. I poured fury into revisions, echoes sharpening into a blade. Jordan's texts pleaded. Coffee? Bryant Park bench? I ghosted him, the silence a mercy wound. Spring teased with crocuses in Washington Square Park, and that's when the call came. My agent, voice electric. Alex, a publisher bit. Echoes, they want it. As is. Elation surged. Bittersweet. I texted Jordan one word. Accepted. His reply, proud. Can we talk? We met at our first spot, the Strand, rain drumming the awning like impatient fingers. "I pulled the proposal," he said, handing me a USB drive, deleted files irrefutable. "It was wrong. You were right." Rain streaked his face, or were those tears? "I got scared, of us being real, of failing you like I failed everyone." I searched his eyes, that hazel storm now calm. "Then prove it. No more ghosts." He nodded, pulling me into the downpour. Our kiss a deluge of forgiveness. New York washed US clean, or so I hoped. But hope is a draft, subject to revisions. As cherry blossoms unfurled along the Hudson, Jordan's editor persisted. Offers sweetened, temptations whispered. And in the quiet of my triumph, I wondered if the missing piece was trust, or if we'd both been chasing illusions all along. Summer crashed into the city like an uninvited guest. Humid nights where the skyline shimmered in heat haze, fire hydrants gushing relief to kids in Hell's Kitchen. My book tour for Echoes kicked off modestly. Readings at Independence from Greenpoint to Gramercy, audiences intimate enough to hear hearts crack. Jordan was my shadow, cheering from back rows, toasting with craft beers at afterparties. His pride a balm on old scars. "You're flying, Alex," he'd say, and in those moments, tangled in sheets sticky with sweat, I'd believe we'd mended the fray. But fractures spiderweb. His freelance gigs dried up, voice layoffs, the digital age devouring print like termites, and resentment simmered beneath his smiles. "It's your time," he'd insist, but I'd catch him scrolling job boards at 3 a.m., jaw clenched. One sweltering July evening, post-reading at McNally Jackson, a fan lingered, young, earnest, gushing about Echoes' revolutionary vulnerability. Jordan hovered, inputting his own card into her phone. For story tips. And jealousy twisted in my gut, irrational but sharp. Is this how it starts? Collecting replacements? We fought over it in the cab, his defensiveness flaring. "It's networking, Alex. You think this glow lasts?" The words hung, a prelude to the storm. Back home, he stormed out for air, returning at dawn with whiskey breath and apologies. "I'm proud, terrified you'll outgrow me." I held him then, our bodies a map of reconciliations, but the seed of doubt had sprouted roots. The real quake hit at the American Booksellers Association Expo in McCormick Place. No, wait, that was Chicago, but fate dragged us back to NYC for the Brooklyn Indie Lit Fest in August, tents baking under relentless sun. I'd been invited to keynote queer voices in the mainstream mirage. Jordan tagged along, his presence a quiet anchor amid the chaos. But as I prepped in a makeshift green room, scribbling notes on authenticity's double-edged sword, his phone lit up. "Eleanor Voss again." "Jordan, reconsider. Your voice is unique. Alex's is derivative." I saw it over his shoulder, the screen a betrayal in pixels. He snatched it away, but too late. "What the fuck?" I hissed, the room spinning. He deflated. "She's desperate." "It's nothing." Nothing? It was venom, aimed at the heart of us. We barreled through the keynote, me channeling fury into fire, the crowd roaring. But backstage, the dam broke. "You're still talking to her?" I demanded, voice a whip. "After everything?" Jordan's face crumpled, confession spilling like ink. "She won't stop. The money, it's a lifeline. My brother's rehab bills, Alex. I didn't tell you because telling meant weakness, and we'd both armored against that. But the lie of omission stung deeper than outright theft. You let her poison us, I accused. For what? A payout on my pain. He reached for me, desperate. I turned her down every time, but the temptation. It's the city's curse. We argued in whispers amid the festival din, words slicing. His ambition a monster, my success a mirror to his stagnation. Maybe we're the wrong story, he choked out, the words a gut punch. I recoiled, fleeing to the waterfront, the East River churning like my thoughts. Days blurred into radio silence. I threw myself into tour stops, Philly, Boston, cities blurring into escape. Fans saw the spark in my readings, but off stage, I was hollow, echoes echoing my own emptiness. Jordan's texts evolved. Miss you too, I fucked up to please. Let's fix this. In D.C., under cherry trees mocking their bloom, I cracked, calling him from a bench, voice raw. I need space, but not forever. Re-entry was tentative. Coffee at Lupin Quotidian. Stilted talk of weather and words. He was thinner, shadows under his eyes, but his laugh, when it came, still hooked me. Therapy, he admitted. Unpacking the collector in me. I nodded, sharing my own sessions, the therapist's probe. What do you fear losing most? Him, always him. Fall gilded the edges again. The high line alive with asters. Our walks resuming like old manuscripts dusted off. We co-wrote fragments. His edge, my lyricism. A hybrid tale of two men chasing truths in the city's labyrinth. Partners, he called it, and slowly the trust knit. But climax waits for no mending. It erupted at the New York State of the Independent Booksellers' Day in Union Square. October's chill nipping at exposed skin. My booth thrummed, signings piling up, echoes climbing indie lists. Jordan manned the merch table, charming as ever, until she arrived. Not Eleanor, but Marcus Hale, Jordan's estranged father, silver-haired and suit-stiff, materializing like a plot device from hell. Dad! Jordan's voice cracked, the air thickening. Marcus clapped his shoulder, oblivious. Saw your byline in the Times, that queer-lit piece? Bold, son. Though the Rivera Kid. Risky territory. Byline? I froze, piecing it. A review? Scathing, voice-adjacent, dissecting echoes as derivative diary. More therapy than triumph. Jordan's work? Anonymous, he swore later, but the damage bloomed. The square spun. I confronted him behind the tense, voice a tremor. You wrote that? My book? Our life, flayed for clicks. He paled, denial fracturing. No, Eleanor ghosted it, used my notes. I swear. But notes? Again, my essence distilled to critique. Betrayal layered upon betrayal, the final tear. You can't stop feeding the beast, I said, chest heaving. Even when it's us on the plate. He begged, tears, pleas, promises. But the crowd's murmur drowned him. I walked away, Union Square's chaos a metaphor. Lives intersecting, then shattering. Winter gripped the city in iron. My tour winding down to silence. Jordan's calls went unanswered. His final letter arrived via courier. A sheaf of pages, our co-written story, titled Fractured Folios. This is the truth, he scrawled. Without you, it's blank. I burned it in the sink. Flames licking words we'd birthed. Ashes swirling like lost chances. Months passed in monastic quiet. Revisions, readings, the slow thaw of self. Spring found me at the Park Avenue Armory again, the circle closing, 1 year since our spark. I wandered the aisles, heart armored, until voices pulled me. Jordan. Interviewing a panelist, voice steady but eyes hollow. Our gazes met over the stacks. Giovanni's room between us. Irony's cruel bookmark. He approached, tentative. Alex, you look whole. I nodded, the ache dulled to echo. Learning to be my own story. No recriminations, just truth. His choices, my healing. I sold the apartment, he said. Moving to Philly. Teaching. Writing on my terms. Pause heavy with unsaid. You were the missing piece. I just didn't know how to hold it. We talked till closing. Forgiveness not reunion, but release. As rain pattered outside, he handed me a slim volume. The Art of Letting Go, inscribed. For the man who taught me plot isn't possession. I smiled, genuine. The city's pulse syncing with mine. The cycle of fairs became my metronome. Spring in the Armory's grandeur. Summer in Brooklyn's breezy tents. Autumn's crisp Union Square. Winter's huddled Bryant Park. Each one a pilgrimage, not for romance's ghost, but for the stories that sustained me. Echoes crested. Paperback runs. Podcast adaptations. Even a film option whispered in Hollywood haze. Success draped like a well-tailored coat. Interviews with NPR, panels at the Paris Review salons. But beneath, the hollow persisted, a page-turner's itch for what-ifs. Jordan's absence was a presence. Philly postmarks with chapbooks of his poetry, sparse lines evoking Hudson sunsets and shared silences. The weight of what we carried sold modestly, reviews praising its unflinching intimacy. No byline scandals, no Eleanor shadows. He'd carved a quieter path, adjunct gigs at UPenn blending with open mics in dive bars. Our emails evolved, professional at first, then confessional. His father's apology over Thanksgiving turkey, my sister's wedding where I danced with abandon, unpartnered but unbowed. One muggy June, the Brooklyn Book Festival looped me back. Tents sagging in humidity, the East River a lazy mirror. I keynote again, voice steadier. Love as narrative. When stories betray and redeem, the crowd leaned in, hungry for the messiness. And as applause faded, a familiar figure rose from the third row, Jordan, older in the eyes, a linen shirt rumpled just so, a notebook clutched like absolution. He waited by the signing table, last in line. Heard you were headlining. Couldn't miss it. His smile was cautious, bridges unburnt but weathered. We slipped to a nearby pier, gulls wheeling overhead, the city a distant hum. Proud of you, he said, no qualifiers. The book's everywhere. Hell, my students dissect it like scripture. I laughed, the sound lighter than memory. And yours? Wait, it's haunting. You found your voice. We walked, knees brushing accidentally on purpose, trading tales. His new dog, a mutt named Gatsby. My foray into mentoring young writers at a village nonprofit. Kids like us? I said. Before the cracks. Dusk painted the water violet, and vulnerability surfaced like driftwood. I was wrong, he admitted, halting by a bench. Tried to own your story because I feared mine was empty. Therapy helped. Turns out, the missing piece was acceptance, not acquisition. His hand hovered, then dropped. You? Forgave you ages ago, I replied, honest. Hated the process, though. Taught me boundaries aren't walls. They're edits. We sat, silence companionable, the skyline winking like an old friend. No grand gestures, just presence, the kind that mends without fanfare. As stars pricked the indigo, he pulled a slim package from his bag. A first edition The Great Gatsby, margins alive with his annotations. Passages underlined, notes on longings double-bind. For your library. Or ours if you want. The offer hung, open-ended. I took it, fingers grazing his. Coffee next weekend? Neutral ground, Strand. He grinned, that Jersey spark igniting. Deal. But only if we debate the ending. We parted with a hug, firm, lingering, but chaste as a comma splice. New York exhaled around us, taxis honking benedictions, the night alive with possibility. No fairy tale vows, no cinematic kiss under fireworks. Just two men, scarred and wiser, circling back to the narrative they'd co-authored in Scars. Months wove onward. Coffees became dinners, debates spilling into dawn. We treaded slow therapy check-ins, honest inventories of fears. His move back to Brooklyn felt organic. A sublet in Williamsburg, dog walks along the promenade where we'd first confessed missing pages. My apartment stayed mine, but his toothbrush migrated to the cup, books intermingling on shelves like old lovers reconciled. The betrayal's echo lingered, a cautionary footnote, but it fueled depth. Joint readings at queer-lit nights, our voices intertwining like plot threads. One crisp November at the antiquarian fair, full circle. He proposed not rings, but partnership, co-author everything. Lives, books, the mess. I said yes, sealing it with a kiss amid leather bindings. The armory's hush our chapel. Climax had come in fractures. Resolution bloomed in increments. We weren't perfect. Arguments flared over bylines, insecurities nipped at heels. But we edited together, ruthless with illusions, tender with truths. New Year's found us on my fire escape, champagne fizzing as midnight tolled. The ball drop a distant cheer. To missing pieces, Jordan toasted, hazel eyes steady. And the stories that find them, I added, clinking glasses. Below, the city thrummed. Endless, unforgiving, but ours. In its chaos, We'd unearthed not completion, but continuation. A humanism etched in every turned page, every forgiven line. Love, it turned out, wasn't a bestseller's arc, neat, resolved, but an infinite draft, revised with grace. And so, in the apple's core, we wrote on.